we have about 15 minutes for questions. I might kick off with one. In the schools that you've designed, how is sport being delivered and how is outdoor spaces provided in the vertical school context? Maybe Andrew?
Sure, and I think we begin to understand the precinct infrastructure or the community infrastructure that's in place. So with the Parramatta School, the intention was to deliver more outdoor space than what was currently held by the existing low-rise school, which a lot of that was paved as well. So it was the quality of it, not just the quantity. So the objective is to increase the experience, the student experience of outdoor spaces, and to utilise or get schools to utilise the use of the adjacent playing fields and open spaces. Obviously it's easier with the sports facilities, but with the open spaces, at this point in time, security is still an issue, even though everyone's going to have their little kind of RFD card soon and be monitored 24/7. But so every place is seen in context, and it is about, vertical schools in urban rural centres, about how you get the maximum involvement between the community and the students in safe ways. So that's an unprecise answer. Thanks.
I think the St Andrew's Cathedral School is a good example of using community spaces. I forget the name, but they actually lease out a block of change rooms and the cricket oval not far from the, I think it's on the fringe near of the CBD, but they've been doing it for years. They've had sporting facilities that are rented from the community, since the day that they started in 1976. So I think with vertical schools and outdoor spaces, as Andrew said, you have to do it in the context of where you are and what access do you have. And it draws in the whole idea of what Camille says, that schools are really becoming, very much the fabric of the community. And there's a bit of, borrowing and lending each other facilities.
It's really only the last 6 to 12 months that the New South Wales government anyway has really started to open up and partner with other education providers. We had a chat to Parramatta Catholic Schools last week, and they mentioned that they're now working with the state government on sharing facilities between their two schools, because often you've got a public school and a Catholic school or an independent school immediately adjacent, and they're both, they've got their own facilities that they're not really sharing or talking to each other. But over the last 6 or 12 months, the two systems have started to look at ways they can integrate their facilities like open space.
Terry?
All of the school designs seem to be very, very generous in terms of the spaces, the flexibility of the space, the double height spaces, open learning, very open concept learning, and very non-traditional in terms of the provision of classrooms. And as was shown in your presentation, teaching styles change over time. And I'm wondering what you are proposing as both the teaching styles might change, and then somebody might decide that all of that open space is either wasteful, and therefore we need to sort of revert it into more traditional classrooms as that changes, and as the demographics sift through in terms of primary kids become older kids, or we then run out of people stop having kids, and what do you do with the spaces after that? So how does it adapt over time?
Okay, so the first question is, we are actually increasing the density, typical density in terms of space per student, then decreasing it. So what you see there saying it's open, it seems quite luxurious, it's actually at a higher density than a typical school. And the reason how you're achieving that is because you're aggregating the spaces together, and then you're enabling them to be used differently. Now, and the point that you make about transitioning, what we call, no one can predict the future, even though we have very strong understandings about where we're heading. And there's a lot of research that's gone in to the new learning styles. But the idea is in these buildings is that they can be easily adapted. So Arthur Phillip model has the spaces which has got the double height spaces for the more flexible and future-focused learning styles, and then it has the L shape, which has got the opportunity for the cellularized space. And the two exist together. So we've done all the programming for the school, and if we wanted to use the existing spaces under full utilisation, we can. But we're also allowing for those other models to be understood and developed over time, knowing that the teachers are being retrained, there's new teachers coming in, so it doesn't happen quickly. Once this school starts and it's understood, we can actually increase, the opportunity is to increase the density, not to decrease it. And we can, the idea with the steel frame and the services design, the systemisation of everything is designed to be, we call adaptable as opposed to flexible, why it's both, is that it can be plug and play. So it's easily reconfigurable, it's easily modifiable. So those, because we're designing a school for 50 to 70 years, not 20. And this is where I'm saying is that if you are designing these assets, they are built for purpose. They are not kind of retrofitted into different typologies. So.
Anything else?
I do have a bit of an engineering answer to your question. So the Swanston Academic Building, university buildings, I mean, they have the same issue, and what you rightly pointed out, what's going to happen in the future and flexibility. So for the Swanston Academic Building, I was saying that we have lecture theatres right up to level 7, and lecture theatres, for a 300-seat lecture theatre, they have to be double height spaces, so it occupies 2 floors. But what we did was the double height space, it's designed from a structural perspective that, if no one wants lecture theatres anymore, we could easily build a floor through it, and instead of having a double height space, it's 2 levels of classrooms. Densification occurs, of course, when you've got 2 levels more of classrooms. So the mechanical systems and electrical systems are modular, as Andrew's saying, this idea of modular, that they can be converted to a higher density building. So there is an engineering solution to trying to crystal ball what a teaching and learning building is going to be.
And from a planning point of view, really opening up schools and rethinking what we think is a school allows you to then integrate other uses like adult learning. So if school populations decline, you can then use it maybe for vocational education if that demand grows, or seniors education and lifelong learning activities. So there's that real opportunity if you do really think of a school as a community hub.
I think we have another question down here.
Is this work? Yeah, fantastic. Firstly, thank you very much for 3 very, very interesting presentations, which I think complemented each other very well, and I think the audience got a really good picture of not only what are the opportunities here, but also what are the challenges in the Australian context to overcome. I've got a specific question for Shu and Andrew around user engagement, user interaction, like the example you mentioned, RMIT building in Melbourne RMIT. You mentioned the challenge of students preferring to use lifts over staircases and over escalators, and you mentioned that you addressed that by educating the user. So I'd be really interested in finding out how you did that. And for Andrew, I've got a question. I saw a lot of operable louvers, window, and you mentioned they were manually operable. What gives you the certainty that the user engages with those opportunities in a responsible way? How do you overcome issues, of security or building, or people leaving windows open or not opening when they're supposed to be opened, and all of that? And I think that's also a challenge to be addressed. I would be interested in your view.
Okay.
Okay, so with the escalators, it was very much, so the building opened in the 2nd semester of the school year, so we had a bit of time to, I guess, ramp up to the proper building opening for the 1st semester of the following year. So in that first 6 months, it was a lot of effort by RMIT. They actually had people in T-shirts, near the escalators, trying to sort of usher people through. And then there was this, it's a very simple solution really, but it's some big stickers on floors with, arrows directing people to the escalators. And we had escalators that go up and down. But because it was a sustainable building, the escalators don't run when it doesn't detect people, in the nearby. So even worse, they don't look like they work, so no one's going to go near it. And if you don't go near it, it doesn't work. So we had big coloured arrows plastered on the floor and on the glass balustrade of the escalators to direct people to using the escalators. I have to say, happy to say, those ugly red stickers 5 years later are now gone. People, you go through a building now, people know how to. I think it's a cultural shift. Because really escalators don't feature in university buildings.
Okay, so it's a really interesting question because we talked a lot about this when we talk about the building being a pedagogical instrument. So everything's monitored, but we don't have the automatic controls. So the building reads its environment and reads how it's performing in its spaces and its surfaces. And then what it does, it then tells the users, the students and the teachers about what needs to be done to modify the environment. Open that window, close that window, increase the air pressure, decrease the air pressure. So it tells them. Now there's about 15 to 20 educators and 300 students per level, and they break down into their own groups as well. And some of the ideas about learning is that with each community, you may then sort of have your energy target goals for each semester. And you have a competition, or you read it, you have objectives and challenges. And so the students get to learn how to modify the environment and how they can, whether they're going to use the electricity if there's no solar power being used, or when to maximise the solar power to offset things. So it's very interactive. So the students begin to take responsibility for the performance, and they get to understand how much it's costing. So it's really important that it doesn't all work for you and you never see it. It's part of your day-to-day responsibility.
I think we've got time for one more question.
What do you think if a building developer should be responsible to provide educational space in a building that can be used as a community space as well, and they can be leased out later? Since, as you say, with the Parramatta case, that you create educational project and then the other developer took all the benefit of having that school there. So my question is, in your opinion, do you think any high-rise should have an educational space in it, like in a school?
I think you're asking whether high-rise buildings should have a proportion for school use. Often, from a planning point of view, and we are seeing that happen or planned for in urban centres in Sydney, particularly where you don't have existing schools, and an area may need a school. So we're seeing plans for schools that take up maybe 5 or 6 stories of a mixed-use building. The only issue with that, and one that I've got, is that doesn't really allow for flexibility in terms of potential growth. So if the school is planned for 600 students, but in 10 or 20 years it needs to get to 1,000, there's really limited scope to do that without increasing the density of students per square metre, which comes with more challenges, because then you need to rethink how things like open space and all of that are delivered.
You might have another, educational space there. Given the technology we have now and the online technology we can learn, it can be rather distributed than concentrated.
So, there's a couple of things which are playing there. So, buildings which have got scale of students, enable a greater investment in the higher performing spaces, which we call the STEAM spaces, and the spaces which can get used by community. If you have the smaller schools, you've got either less ability to do that, or they're not not the appropriate size. So schools are not necessarily scalable. So this idea of schools around 2,000 per person is around an optimum size. You can increase it and you can decrease it from that point, but that gives you that optimization. Then we provide those social principles which break it down into those learning communities. You begin to get what the program for a school can be. Because once you make it too big, it doesn't work. Also, you're optimising the amount of of teaching staff as well. And again, around that 2000 model, you're getting optimisation of teaching staff. So all these things begin to kind of work into the efficiencies. Now, I think you can embed that into another building, and we get these hybrid buildings. And I think there's great opportunities where you can put greater intensity with schools and get greater utilisation of the available land to preserve other characteristics. I think that's the next step. It may take another 10 years to get there, but I think we should be thinking about it now. Yeah.
Right, got a couple of announcements to make, but first of all, I'd like to thank our three speakers, Camille, Andrew and Shu. Thank you very much for telling us about vertical schools. And secondly, many thanks to your involvement for day one of the conference, which I now bring to a close. For those of you who are registered to the networking event kindly hosted by Lend-Lease and sponsored by Schindler Group, it's only a short 7-minute walk to the venue, so please check your conference guides. There's a map there. Before you head out to the hotel. Those registered for the event will have a corresponding icon on your name badge. I think it's on the back. And that will give you entry to the networking event. Please note that it starts at 6 p.m. and some time to visit the CTBUH booth would be great before you leave. And for those who's not attending, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.